are the Conservative MP Jacob Rees-Mogg and the Labour MP and former Europe Minister Caroline Flint. Caroline Flint, how do you think UK is doing in these negotiations?
Well, it seems to me from the reporting of this week that what the government need to consider is how they can expand what their position is on what their red lines are on certain areas, but also where they are willing to compromise.
What, more red lines?
Well, no, I think the thing is, at the moment, it isn't very clear about what they see as the package that they want. Now, I understand that we have got some time to go and they're not going to show all their hand, but I would think on some of the big issues around the bills, the borders, on single market, freedom of movement, I think the government could stake out more where it feels the direction of travel should be. And I think that would be helpful, not only in terms of negotiations, but I think it would be helpful in Parliament, particularly when we come back in the autumn to discuss aspects of the repeal bill and how we're going to leave. I think that would be helpful. And in all of this, I think as well, my view is there will have to be some compromises. At the end of the day, whatever deal we come up with won't please all the Remainers, won't please all the Leavers, but have to be done in a way that we can plan the way we're going to pursue this, both before that final deadline, but also post-Brexit, about taking up opportunities that might exist for us to do outside of the European Union that we can't do now. So I think greater certainty, greater clarity, some element of idea about the compromise would be helpful. And finally, I would say, Adam, is that they could possibly think about putting someone like Keir Starmer on the negotiating team, because I think that actually would be quite helpful too.
Jacob Rees-Mogg, we're very clear where you stand on the issue of Brexit. Do you think we are clear enough on where the government stands?
I think so, but you can't lay out all your cards early in a negotiation. I very much agree with Caroline's analysis. I think a lot of it's absolutely right. I accept that there will be compromises. There will be bits at the end of it that I think are not what I wanted. There will be bits that people who voted Remain don't like at all because we're leaving the European Union. But what you need to do within a negotiation is keep your cards close to your chest. And what I've been hearing is that things this week have gone very well, that they're close to agreement on Northern Ireland. They're not a million miles away from agreement on citizens' rights. The big and difficult issue is money. But what I've also heard, which is really encouraging, is that the European side is both surprised and impressed by the efficacy of the British civil service, which is really reassuring that our civil servants are apparently impressing the EU side for their diligence and capability. And that's very encouraging.
I mean, that is a change, isn't it? Because, of course, the previous UK representative resigned because he didn't really feel he was being included by the last government's team.
Vanitas, vanitatum et omnia vanitas, I think is all I can say to him. But I think there is now, from what I hear, a really good team in place, and that they're doing a good job and they're on top of the detail. And in fact, they're asking the EU counterparts questions that the EU counterparts haven't thought about. And that puts us in a good position for the negotiation. So what I've been hearing, and we'll know more later on, so what I'm hearing is only gossip at this stage, is that our team's had a really good week.
But, you know, from their point of view, European Union's point of view, there is obviously balancing the books and being concerned about the budget. Is that an area where you think we've now got to say, look, we did enter into obligations, so it might be a more painful amount of money rather than telling them to go whistle, as Boris Johnson did?
No, I think Boris Johnson is legally correct. There's a very good report by the House of Lords European Scrutiny Committee, which set out that if we leave without a deal, under EU, international and UK law, we owe no money. And that's a very good starting point.
So
for these
without a deal, is it?
Without a deal, that's right. So then you're saying, what is it in our interest to pay to get certain other elements that we want? But their starting negotiation position from the EU point of view is they have no legal basis for demanding these payments.
No, but they're saying that is the gateway to getting a deal, and you want a deal, don't you? Or would you like no deal?
They're saying a moral obligation. But a moral obligation ranks for less than a legal obligation.
No, but they're also saying that's how we can part as friends. I mean, what's your personal view? I mean, we have entered into obligations, haven't we?
The obligations cease on the day we leave the European Union. That's completely clear.
Even for programmes which are continuing to run?
If we want to maintain part of specific programmes, that's clearly different. The Erasmus programme, the Horizon 2020 programme, I have no difficulty with us continuing to contribute to those. There is then a negotiation on what Brexit looks like, And if money oils the wheels, we have it, they want it, but we should make sure we get a great deal in return for that.
What do you think about this divorce bill, as it's called?
Well, I mean, you know, that's always the important thing often at the end of marriages to sort out, and often the most difficult part to sort out as well. But there will be trade-offs. I think that's the thing as well. And I do think in all of this, you know, the public, on one level, I think, Adam, the public are probably completely switched off from some of this, to be honest. But on the other level, I think the public also want to know what they should prepare for as well. And this will become more important as each week, month passes by and we get closer to that deadline, because although we've got the cut-off point in 2019, in March, the truth is by Christmas next year, we really need to have it sort of sealed. And the public do need to be prepared for what compromises might be taking place. And the bill, whatever that may be, is part of that, and the explanation for part of it. And there is a tone to all this. The government have said, David Davis, that in leaving the European Union, which I believe we will, our relationship should be still positive and good going forward. And in that respect, the language and how we pursue this and how we prepare for it, so it's not all rushed to the end, I think is an important part of that sort of relationship going forward, and the public's acceptance of whatever the deal might be.
Now, on that point, you were a strong supporter of Remain. This week we've had Tony Blair, Michael Heseltine, some others saying, yes, it's possible this all could be reversed. You've decided you don't think that's a helpful approach?
No, I don't think it's a helpful approach, because there was a referendum. All the arguments that Tony and others were making in the last week about reform to freedom of movement, that could have been made before, when Tony was Prime Minister, when Gordon was Prime Minister, when we were in opposition. David Cameron, as I have said, when he did go to Europe to try and get reform, we could have all got together in a unified fashion and backed him on that, and we didn't back him on that. In fact, Labour actually called him out for being weak. I think we have to focus on getting the best deal. That will mean we're leaving. It is about the end of freedom movement. It is about jobs. And I think in the country's interests, actually in terms of cross-party working, and I said this in my Queen's Speech debate, actually inviting someone like Keir Starmer to be part of the team would actually be a really positive way forward.
Well, let's put that to Jacob Rees-Mogg. But first of all, I mean, do you think there's any chance this could be reversed? I mean, we are getting serious politicians saying they see an opportunity, if you like.
Serious politicians is a nice way of putting it. They're people who were serious politicians a few years ago but have retired from the front line. I think Caroline's analysis is absolutely spot on. The country voted to leave, and that serious current practitioners have accepted that result. I think it would be very dangerous to try to overturn a result that was passed at a referendum. It would be...
Even by another referendum or a general election?
The idea that you vote until you give the right answer in Europe is a really dangerous one. I think it fundamentally undermines democracy if you get made to vote until you do what the Eurocrats want.
Yeah, but after all, this referendum reversed...
That's right, you could do best of three.
No, but this referendum reversed the referendum 40 years ago. So
40 years ago, that's the point. Yeah, absolutely, have a referendum in 40 years if you want to rejoin. That's fine. And we'll be coming along here, rather elderly figures, to discuss it, which I look forward to. But
we won't have been able to
it's all right, the retirement age. Exactly.
That's right. I see the retirement age is going up. It's been announced again. I just missed this particular cut-off, but never mind. Should other people be involved was the question. It's very hard to do in our political system. It's an attractive idea theoretically, but we have such an adversarial system that it's quite hard to have Sir Keir Starmer in the negotiations, and then you have Dexu questions in the Commons 3 days later, and he's got to go hammer and tongs at David Davis on something that he's been on the inside of. And I'm not unattracted to the idea, but I think the practicalities are quite hard to overcome.
How would you get around it?
I just think this is one of the most important decisions the country's made for, 40 years, as we've just said, and it's going to have a long-term effect for probably another 40, 50 years. I just think, the public wants actually us all to come together on this. Now, I agree, there are issues about then the scrutiny in the House of Commons, we have the Brexit Committee and others, but I do think we have to show that, the political class, for want of a better word, are trying their best to get the best out of a situation, out of a democratic vote.
But the problem with that is you would be collaborating in bringing about something which you think is a bad idea.
No, I think the thing is it's about accepting accepting the will of the people, and the Labour Party position and the position of our front bench is clear. We accept we're leaving the European Union. We do have priorities around jobs and workers' rights, but also we know we have to get the best deal. And part of actually moving forward is thinking about, from a Labour perspective, what things we could offer differently, being more in charge of some of the aspects of public life and policy that we currently don't have now. And we're almost not able to get onto that agenda because of the impasse we are at the moment in terms of getting the best we can out of our negotiations. But it's not going to be easy. And I do believe it was a democratic process, and I think a lot of Remain people actually also believe we should be getting on with it too.
OK, on that note of agreement, thank you both very much indeed.